Good evening, everyone, and welcome to. Oh, my banner went away. We don't want that to happen. Let's get that banner back up there. It's episode. Oh, it says episode 1245. Well, that's not right. Obviously, it's episode 125. And so happy that you're here with me tonight. We have taken quite a journey over these 125 episodes together. Dozens of guests, panelists, now contributors to the show. I have put a lot of links in the comments to start us off tonight. When the show is over tonight, you'll want to pay attention during the show. But when the show is over, go and explore those links. I think that our guests, as we say here, welcome to Into the Outer Realms. I'm your interstellar host, Joey Medea, taking you into the outer realms where the paranormal and the supernatural become the normal and the natural. And of all of our dozens of guests, I do think, I will say right up front, Mark Fiorentino could be the person to get us closer to taking that para and that super out of there and starting to look at the world through an old lens, the lens that people like Albert Einstein, I have my Albert Einstein t-shirt on tonight, Nikola Tesla, these visionaries. I think that Mark Fiorentino is a visionary the way that they are. It's exciting. I've read a 37-page PDF that he wrote on something that he calls the theory of super relativity that he's going to talk to tonight. So this is going to be a scientific discussion, but we had some time before the show to talk. He's an excellent teacher, explains these things that I understand. That we were talking about stable and unstable elements and isotopes, and I was completely getting it. I think we're going to talk about Bob Lazar a little tonight and get his opinion. So I want to just run the show opening. I see that there's lots of people here. We're already getting lots of comments. I'm going to run the show opening, come back. He's very, very modest. So it's a one-sentence bio. You know, sometimes these things are 3/4 of a page, and then we're going to jump in. So welcome, folks. And I think we are going to have just a terrific show. There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon, the preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, the couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms. All right, some amazing people here in the audience, lots of contributors, lots of longtime fans. So happy to see you guys here in the chat room with us today. I have to tell you, Mark is beginning to get an energetic following. I posted the other day that he was going to be on the show, the event page, and no sooner did I do that than a close friend of mine said, I just bought his book for someone the other day. So that's a wonderful thing. So here's the bio. Author Mark Fiorentino has been obsessed with Einstein's unified field theory ever since hearing about it when he was 10 years old. We're going to start with that. How does a 10-year-old boy get hooked into the advanced theories of this man, and where did it take his life?
He worked for many years in the high-tech industry, including for IBM. He retired and set out to write a book. That book came out in 2020. It is called Master of Reality. What a provocative title. Let's welcome to Into the Outer Realms, Mark Fiorentino. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Joey. It's nice to be here.
So good to have you with me, guys. If you hear Mark's accent, you know it's familiar. We come from the same stopping grounds, and I think maybe some of the same DNA, because he looks like, if any of my family's on the show tonight, he looks like my Uncle Mike and my Uncle Pete, my dad's brothers. So welcome to the show. So 10 years old, and you learned about this man with the wild hair and the wry smile, Albert Einstein. Tell us about that.
Yeah, when I was just 10 and I was going to catechism classes at my church, the nuns, I remember, said, go home and find a saint born on your birthday. So this is 1965. There's no internet. This is not an easy thing to do in that time. Today would have been pretty easy, although I've looked, I don't think I found a saint on my birthday still, but at that time I went home, I talked to my parents, I asked them, they weren't aware of anybody born on March 14th. But I remember walking over to the calendar in the kitchen, and there on March 14th, my birthday was named Albert Einstein. So I had no idea who that was. So I walked over to our Encyclopedia Britannica, and I opened up the chapters and so forth on Albert Einstein. And from reading that, I went and read an article about the unified field theory, which struck me as so familiar and so sensible that I had to know more about this. And then, I continued throughout my life, childhood and teenage years and early 20s, 30s, reading everything I could about anybody who made any claims about the unified field theory. And I, of course, studied everything that Einstein, wrote, or most of what he wrote, and all of his opinions and thoughts on that topic. And after a while, it sort of gave me ideas. So, and then I started writing them down. And eventually, when I retired, I wrote this book with all the ideas, and a full-blown theory was revealed to me. I guess
that's exciting. So there's this overarching here. I'm gonna skip around just a little. I do want to know your encounters with psychics, because as the viewers here, I believe it's all of a piece. And we talked a little about Tesla, you and I, and there was that idea, energy, frequency, vibration. To understand the spiritual, it's great to know the science, and to know the science better. I got hooked into all of this. I was in my late 20s with Fritjof Kopra's The Tao of Physics. And then I was on to Michael Baum and Michael Talbot and David Bohm and the holographic universe, and, all of that. And then on to Rupert Sheldrake and, all of that. So explain to us the unified field theory.
Well, basically, it can be done in one sentence. Okay. Electromagnetism and gravity emerge as aspects of a single fundamental field. So what that's saying is, and what I gathered over the years, back before the year 1905, the single fundamental field was thought of as being the ether. Yeah. So that space itself was a real object, a real thing. And the classic definition that really came from Hendrik Antoon Lorentz, was that it's a quasi-rigid or quasi-elastic solid. So space really is the only real thing that exists. Everything else is made from that foundational field, that fundamental field. Magnetism and gravity are actually secondary fields that they're emergent, that come out as a result of moving charge. So the electrostatic field, the Coulomb force, is the primary field of force in this universe. It forms the structures that move through space, and when they move through space, they bend it. Magnetism happens, and gravity happens. This is the theory of super relativity in a nutshell. So it all comes about by agreeing with what Einstein said. Electromagnetism and gravity must emerge as aspects of the single fundamental field. I followed that path and found it to be true.
Right. So I'm gonna I lean toward the mystical sometimes because I do think that that's a piece of the pie here. So ether, I think of the Akashic record, this idea of a memory strip embedded somehow in there with the combined knowledge of the universe where time and space sort of break down. Is that accounted for in your work where you're headed or not?
Well, my theory is an intelligent design theory.
Okay, great.
So it's going to kind of agree with what you just said, but I'm going to get more specific.
Right. Good.
And because I I firmly believe that science and religion need to merge, and over science will be religion. Now I know that sends shockwaves into the backs of scientists and physicists because they think that science is the highest thing. But I also studied many near-death experiences,
Wow.
as well as having my own very personal spiritual transformative experiences. And from that information gathered then, I had more knowledge. And basically, many near death people have said this about um, what we're talking about, what the ether is, and what reality is here, this universe. And one I have on a blog on my website, a video of Father Rick Wendell, who had a near death experience, and it has information relayed to him by God himself. And this information has been repeated to other near death experiences. So I'm going to sum it up for you. Basically, what he says, God says to him, is all of this three-dimensional world is within God. There is nothing outside of God. Everything within this physical universe has to correspond to laws, and God set those laws. They are immutable as God is immutable. None of this, what we see and experience, is an accident. It is intentioned by God. So, what I'm saying is, we're basically, some people want to call it the Matrix, or, we're basically living inside the mind of God, who has intentioned this universe, and others who have had near death experience see God casting out new universes instantly, because he's doing this all. He is the creator. He didn't just create one universe. If you can make one, you can make two, right? And if you
Yeah.
can make two, why not an infinite amount? Because there's no limitation to space. And since God is eternal, uh, the space is part of what he intended, or was here since the very beginning, coexisting with God. You know, who knows that for sure until you get to the other side, and then things are known instantly. Even before you think of the question, you then know the answer. And so, what I've given you is a little snippet of what's really going on here. This whole system was developed, as I've come to understand, so that we can have experiences, not only happy experiences, but suffering and challenges and misery and joy and all those things that you really can't get in heaven. So our physical universe is a universe that was constructed so that we can experience time and have challenges and develop spiritually. So this universe, and then knowing that, I worked on going to the creator. That's what I call it. Doesn't mean that I've talked to God directly. I believe I've gotten some information by the process of infusion,
Mhm.
as I'm sure many people get who are creative in any part of the world, whether they're writers, artists, musicians, singers. you get some of your guidance, your help from the other side, from spiritual beings. I call them guardian angels, spirit guides, so forth, that have been actively working in my life, and then have, in some cases, actually saved my life. Um, so I know for sure, this is knowledge I'm talking about, that
Right.
heaven exists, God exists, the afterlife exists, and it's part of this big game that we're in that's called life, the life
Right.
experience. So basically, what I'm saying is the universe, the physical universe, was created by the ultimate creator, a stage so that we can act out our lives.
Oh, that's beautifully stated, especially to a performing artist like myself and writer. So let's unpack some of how you got there. It's wonderful. I went to Catholic school myself, and I took so much. You know, people ask, well, when did you really get interested in these things? I said I grew up in it. From the day I was born, I grew up in these theories. So that's wonderful. So, your early years, your encounters with psychics that taught about a special life plan. Let's unpack some of those general statements.
Yeah, definitely. We all come, and this is again from NDE people. I read about one person who was given a guided tour of the pre-birth process. And in there, he outlines in detail that we all have a life plan. All of us, all 8 billion people on this planet. Nobody just came here for on a lark for, just for fun. There's some sort of life plan. And you go up and you swear before God Himself that you're going to try to remember that life plan and live it out and have your first best destiny. I'm sure most people fail, but every once in a while somebody gets it right, and recovers the memories, and it's kind of like what I think that I'm finally doing now at 60 something years old. But as it turns out, I was always following the right path, even though I didn't know for sure. So let's talk about the psychics, which
Yeah.
has also guided me in this direction. I At the age of 19, I'm going to community college and, just doing what most people do. And, there's this professor, Steve Goldman, who's in class, and he's talking about this place called Casadega. And it's a place here in Florida. It's a spiritualist, North American spiritualist capital of the world, or of North America. And it's a town full of psychics. And I said, wow, that's pretty interesting. I says, I think I'd like to do that. And he was talking about how spooky the town is and everything. So I told some of my friends, and we scheduled a trip to Casadega, which is, I don't know, about 40 or so miles away from where I live. And we decide, well, we'll go there, and then from there we'll go up to Daytona and have a good time, at the weekend at Daytona Beach. So we go up there, and it's October, and it's a perfect day to go. It's fall, and it's overcast, and it's kind of spooky a little bit, and we're going to have an adventure. I'm thinking, we're going to go get our fortunes told, which I know they don't like you saying now. I think it's called a reading, and I try to respect that. So, but at the time,
Sure, you're 19,
fortune
right?
told.
Yeah.
Ooh, fun. So a bunch of us go up there in 2 cars, and I'm driving my car, and the other guys are driving their car, and we pull into town, and nobody out there. It's just houses and this wind blowing, and we pull over, we stop, and all of a sudden there's this big crack and a boom, and this down comes this big branch and falls on the other guy's car. They get spooked, and they said, we're getting out of here, we'll go to Daytona. And they left me and the other guy. So me and the other guy, we walk around, we're going around town knocking on doors. They got little signs, psychic, medium, you see somebody open the curtains and they close it. And we're saying we try a couple houses. About the 3rd or 4th house, we found a lady. Her name was Martha McKay. It still amazes me I remember her name. And we go in there, and she's very nice. She's the classic little old lady, that you would kind of see as a psychic. The only thing, she didn't have a crystal ball. but she just did her thing and and talked to the other side. She was a medium. And I went first, and I had what I would call a classical, normal reading, telling me about my future wife, telling me about my future kids, telling me about my future job. All of it came true.
Wow.
Just as she said, within like 2 years' time, boom, boom, boom. All of her predictions, except for the one where she saw me with on all these wires and she called them television screens, but they turned out to be computer screens, came
Oh,
true,
okay.
and was a very vivid. She's I don't. At the time, electronics wasn't really that big yet,
Yeah.
and for especially for her of the past generation, where all this stuff with transistors and radios and TVs was all very new and strange. And she was an older lady, and of a past generation, and she was trying to describe something she didn't really understand what she was seeing. And I remember the day when I saw the vision she saw, and I'm sitting in my lab in the IBM, and I have all these wires coming down. There's desks all around me, computers running all around me with all the cables and the communicate and the power cables and the Ethernet cables raining down all around me. And I says, "Oh, this is what she saw. Yeah, it's damn confusing if you don't know what computers are, which weren't out yet."
Yeah.
And,
See,
and so she got that right too.
my wife is a psychic medium. The audience knows that. Quite talented. My daughter is too. I find those things more affirming.
Yeah,
When it's, I see this, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but just stick with me. This is what, and then the person a day later, a week later, a year later says, "Oh my goodness," and has the same exact experience as you. So just wanted to chime in there quick. Please
yeah,
continue.
okay.
Fascinating.
Well, the really weird stuff happens after I leave. Okay, I leave, my friend goes in, he has a reading. And then we leave. I remember there was a couple of girls waiting to have a reading behind us, and we passed them and said hi and went out. They were sitting on the porch, the outdoor porch, while we were inside in the waiting room in the actual room. And we're driving to Daytona Beach, and I'm thinking, hey, he's talking about his encounter, his reading, and then he says something to me out of the blue. He says, "Hey, Mark, that's really something about what she said about you." And I said, "Hmm, well, what did she say? Because my reading was kind of normal. I mean, she said, "Oh yeah, someday you're going to be famous. You're going to make a great discovery or invention or something." That part is a little vague. I don't even remember exactly what he said, whether he mentioned a book or an invention. I left with the idea of an invention. And but years later, another psychic who I went to counseling for quite some time during a personal crisis period, having nothing to do with any of this, also comes up and says, well, several of the psychics said this the first time they see me, and they look at me, says, "In your final days, you will be a spiritual teacher."
Oh, okay.
I mean, for them to say the same exact words, somebody's telling them that, and
Right.
they're just repeating it. And so there's more evidence. The guardian angels are right there on the spot when you go in for your meeting, and they're talking to her
Yeah.
or them. And then another psychic medium that I'm taping it's a lecture at the community college. Uh, his name was Russ Burgess. He says, I ask him a question. This guy's blindfolded. He's got things over his eyes. He could just, what do you call that when you have touch and you can read things, with just touch, tachometry or something.
Yeah.
Uh, he read the actual question, even though he was blindfolded, and he got my name right. And then he made some announcement. He says, "This is very unusual." And he started asking me questions. "You seem to have extraordinary powers of concentration." And we're connecting because when he picked up my paper, I knew it immediately. I got chills in the back of my neck. Even before he said anything, he's got mine because we passed around a hat or something. And wrote our little questions on and folded them up and put them in the hat. And then he had the lady pick, and then one at a time he went. He picked mine first. And my question was, I'm thinking about that invention from the other psychic.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
says, well, will I ever do an invention or something? Will it be successful? And he says, yes, but it'll take you much longer than you think. And that was when I was 20. Now I'm 67. It's just about to happen.
Oh, so has this, you know, we all, we all have our path, and some of us know very clear. I seem to know from the time I was a little kid why I was here, and I followed that path, even though
That's
it's been a
good.
very windy path,
That's good.
And I tell people, if your path is just straight all the time, you're not challenging yourself enough. So when you got that, do you draw on that and you say, but I have this destiny. I have this thing. I just need
Well,
to keep
that's
going.
become dominant now.
Yeah.
Throughout the years, I kind of let it go. It was always kind of in the back of my mind, but I'm saying, well, I can't invent anything now. I tried, and I started to try to invent, to try to bring something forward. But that's not the plan.
Yeah.
That was never the plan. The plan was I'd have to go through all these other life experiences first, work at this company, work at that company, work at IBM, work at a Harris government system, so forth and so on, live my life, experience these things, have a marriage, a divorce, all the things.
Right.
And later in my life, when here's another psychic who brings up the invention. Once again, I was not there for this. I
Yeah.
was there for a marital crisis, trying to get help with my, keep the marriage going. But then that psychic says to me, first thing, in your final days, you will be a spiritual teacher. Okay, there's that. That's the 3 times now.
Yeah.
And then we got because I was wanting to spend money to buy parts to make an invention, and I didn't have any money because my wife was spending tremendous amounts of money. We were fighting, and so this triggered this going to this lady from a counselor lady who said, just happens to be there's great psychic. This will help you because you've got this weird situation where you've got this feeling that you've got to do something, and my inventions didn't work then. It wasn't the right time. And this lady said to me, she says, it's not, you're not ready yet. You don't have everything you need.
Yeah.
And so then at that point, I stopped. I stopped trying to make perpetual motion machines and stuff like that. And I said, okay, I'm just going to go about my business, and maybe someday something will come up. And so it was always kind of in the background, but they kept bringing it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over time, and saying, hey, how can 6 different mediums all kind of say the same thing over a 50-year span of time? It's not like these people are calling each other up and say, hey, Mark's coming to you next.
No.
This is what you got to tell them. And they don't know each other, but they are all talking to the same people on the other side who can't reveal. You cannot be told exactly your life plan when you're 20.
No.
You're only going to give you enough. They only gave me enough. Look how it was presented to me. It was not told to me when I was in the room, because if she had said it, I had started asking questions.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, famous. I want to know, how's that going to happen? Let's get to
Sure.
work on that right away. But you know what? They were smart enough to say, don't tell him, tell his friend, and then he'll hear about it in the car, but won't be able to dig for any more information. And that's exactly what happened. It put the seed in my head just enough to make sure that I'm leaning in the right direction or thinking in the right direction, just a taste. And so the whole thing, if you look at it from afar, all the things, it's like the song that played on the way to the first psychic lady we went to. The song went, distant hands in foreign lands are turning hidden wheels, causing things to come about that no one seems to feel, all invisible from where we stand, yet the connections come to pass, all too hard to comprehend, they affect us nonetheless. A song from James Taylor, played on the radio the day I went to that first psychic. And I says, this means something.
Yeah.
It just tweaked my interest a little more and made me focus a little more. But that's how it works. All of these things, it's like a clockwork of all these things coming together and clicking in, clung, clung, what we call synchronicities.
Yes.
It's all designed to help you get on your path if you learn to listen. And that was my biggest problem. A lot of times I didn't listen. And one time it almost cost me my life. And
Yeah.
it's very frustrating if you're my guardian angel. And they eventually said at one, you never listened to us anyway. And this was after the famous incident where I almost died because I didn't listen to them. So would you like me to tell you that one?
Oh, you have to.
All right. So I'm still working at IBM, still married to my first wife. And I go home, and there's this Harris Boulevard, and you go down. And at the time, it didn't go through. Eventually, they finished the road, and it went almost right to where I lived. But at that time, you had to stop, and there was a T intersection. You go left, you go through the quiet country roads. Takes a little longer, but it's peaceful, a lot less traffic. Or you go right, it's a little quicker usually, but there's a lot more traffic, a lot more lights, so it might not be so quick. And most of the days I turn left. And on this day, I'm thinking to myself, I'm pulling up to the, I'm going to go left today. And as soon as I thought that, a voice comes in my left ear. Now, I'm not talking about inside my head voice. I'm talking as if somebody were talking right next to my ear.
I understand.
So I hear it audibly, and the voice says, don't go that way. So I whip around and look behind me and think there's somebody in my car, but there's nobody there. So I, kind of being a science kind of guy, and then it says, don't go that way again for a second time. So I'm stopped at the intersection, and I'm thinking, oh, now I got to go that way because I got to see if what just happened was real.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was really stupid because
It's an interesting.
what was happening was real. So I went that way. If you're going up to an elevator and you hear a voice say, don't get in, do not get in. I'm giving you that advice right now. And that has happened to people. And as you'll find out, and as I have found out, this thing has happened a lot to other people as well.
9/11. There were
I'm
lots
sure
of
there
stories
was
of people who didn't go to work that day.
That day,
Yeah.
that was no accident.
Right.
They weren't supposed to be there, so they weren't there.
Yeah.
So I went that way and think, well, all right, it's going to be an accident. It's probably going to be a head-on collision. So now I'm looking ahead the whole time. I'm very careful going through stop signs and stoplights, and it wasn't that many. But I'm looking ahead, and sure enough, down this big straightaway, there's a van in front of me, and I could see around them. It's a 2-lane highway. So there's this pickup truck, and he's swerving wildly. I mean, he's going into our lane, going off the road, coming back on, going all the way in his lane, off the road, coming back on. And he's doing it over and over like a madman. And finally, we're seeing this up ahead. So the guy in front of me just pulls over, and I said, holy cow, he's coming right at me. I whip it around, and I spin and go into a ditch. And I see him going by me. And just by inches, we miss. And, I spin out and crash into the road, the side of the road, because there's kind of a ditch there. He spins out and stops in the middle of the road. And so there was all these cars scattered all over the place. So what have we learned here? The other side can see into the future. The closer you are to it, the more accurate they can see. Now, I know this is hard to comprehend. I've struggled with it my whole life. I have a hard time believing that you can see into the future. Yet over and over in my life, I've had it demonstrated to me that you can. And I, in fact, did it myself upon dreaming. Well, upon praying one night, again, I says, how can this be? How can you see into the future? And I fell asleep with this idea in my head. And now I have this vivid dream that night. I have a dream where there's I'm walking to work. And this dream is really beautiful. It's in color, which I don't usually have this kind of a vivid dream. Walking in through the parking lot and the sun's coming up. Beautiful. I'm walking east toward the sun. And I look and it's beautiful sunrise. And I think that. And then I look down and I see a dime heads up on a stripe between the two cars. And I pick it up. And then I wake up. I says, that's weird. That's kind of a weird dream. And I fall back to sleep and I forget about it. I get up in the morning, not thinking about the dream because I've forgotten about it. I drive to work. I park the car. I'm walking in. I see the sunrise. I says, this looks familiar. And I'm walking and then I look down and I see a shiny dime heads up on the stripe, just like in my dream. And as soon as I saw it, I said, I dreamt this last night. So I took the dime in and I took it to my office mate and I said, hey, can you take this home, drill a hole in it? I want to make a necklace because, and I told him the story. This was a prophecy. This happened. I dreamt it and it really happened. You can tell the future. Somebody sent me a message, set all that up to prove to me that you could see into the future. And I wonder why was that prayer answered? It must have been really important for me to know that, for me to believe that you could tell the future because people told my future. Right. And I wasn't so sure if I was ready to believe that or not. Well, after that day, I was pretty damn sure that, hey, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
And we're in some sort of kind of a dream or something. And you can do stuff like that. And I should keep that in mind for my future.
One of our audiences, so you could tell us now, which you're fulfilling your role as a spiritual teacher. You're doing that. You're beginning that, which is great.
Yeah.
Do you still have that dime?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's in there.
Treasure.
It's in the room by my bed. I went and checked it a few weeks ago, and it's still there because that means a lot to me. That dream and that happening. You see, there's lessons here to be learned, not just for me, but for everyone listening tonight. Yeah. Know that you have guardian angels or spirit guides, if you want. Call them what you will. They've been with you from the moment you were born to the last breath you take. They'll never be away from you. And that's a good thing. It's a happy thing to know that you got a team on your side that's helping you live through your life and get through the hard times as well as the good times. And it's important to acknowledge them. That's why I'm acknowledging them tonight on most of the shows I do. And for the rest of my life, I will. And I look forward to the day I could shake their hands and thank them for helping me through this life. Because this has been a tough one. And it ain't over yet.
No.
I can tell you that.
One of our longtime audience members and a very good friend of mine, a fellow author, Jessica, she says, I feel sorry for my spirit guides. But I think that they have a patience. I think that they know that we're here in school like a good teacher.
Yeah.
Like a good parent who walks that line between, I don't want you to get so hurt. I don't want you to get so off track. I don't want you to get so discouraged. But I'm here. Know that I'm behind you. My grandfather, who you remind me of so much, used to say, as long as you fall on your face and not your ass, you're making forward progress. Just keep going. Just keep going. And
right.
So I am continually, less so now that I'm getting older, but, I spend a lot of time on my face, but not that much time on my ass. But so I want to share something with you real quick, and we still have a lot to cover. So I'm going to watch. But so when I was 16 years old, I was on a bus from the Jersey Shore to the Shakespeare Festival in Connecticut. And I heard a voice, and it wasn't
And it said to me, never mind what it said. It was very personal,
Okay.
and kind of embarrassing to say, but
Okay.
it was something that I went, okay, then I got a lot to do. I got to get busy. And people would say to me, Joey, you got a million things going on, because this voice, it made an impression. But I was in a very bad marriage. I was in a job that I hated. I was 29 years old. And I was driving to work one day to Princeton, New Jersey. I worked at a big publishing company. I was a manager.
Einstein's hometown.
Yeah, right on. So, and I'm coming to a crossroads. And when you commute day after day, this 45-minute commute, especially in Jersey, right? We all commute. Your mind drifts, you're problem solving, you're picking things apart, you're visualizing your day. And I blow a red light.
Oh.
And I enter the intersection. And the audience has heard this before in different contexts. And there are cars coming from both directions. You know, when that light turns green, people go in Jersey, right, at rush hour. It's in the morning commute. And so I close my eyes, I grip the wheel, and I go, okay, this is going to be bad, but it shouldn't last too long. Well, Mark, I don't hear brakes. I don't hear crunching. I don't hear anything. I am on the other side of that intersection, and I am on my way to work. It is impossible that everybody missed me and nobody gave the finger, or yelled, or, you know, it's Jersey. And my life within a year completely fell apart. And I have been convinced that I was morphed out, phased out, and redeposited.
Yeah.
Because I had things to do. And maybe they're not things that are, you know, who's to say? But I had things to do, and I still have things to do at 54 years old. I know in some ways I'm just getting started in my journey, right? So I've been doing this since I was 8 years old, and things are just starting to pop now with New York and LA and this and that. And I'm on an airplane Monday for California. All that to say, I understand, because, you know, my guardian angels weren't there to say, pay attention, Joey. Don't turn down Howard Stern on the radio. Don't go into that intersection. My experiences, for whatever reason, it was different.
Yeah.
But it's close.
No, I've heard similar stories where some of them are near death, but some of them are just like yours. Somehow reality goes, and you're protected.
Yep.
And there's a lot of stories like that. If you dig around out there, you can find them. A lady was walking that I was in a writers group, and the lady revealed the story how she was saved by being hit by a train, and why she was on the track. I don't know why, but she was walking across the track, and it was like near the station, and she somehow didn't hear the train, and it was almost upon her, and all of a sudden somebody grabs her and pulls her off the track, and then the train goes rushing by, and her life is saved, and she gets up to thank him, and there's nobody there. So it's very similar to yours, and there are so many stories out there. Somebody ought to write a book and compile them all. But this happens a lot, actually. It happened to my wife. She almost crossed the track in front of a train. She was looking one way. The train was coming from the other. Why she didn't look the other way, I don't know. But she felt a little wind blowing on her ear, made her turn her head. She looked and saw the train just the last second before she went across the track. So there's another story. This is happening all over the world. Somebody is watching out for you, and if it's not your time, it's an exit point, an early exit point, and you have a guardian angel that's assigned to prevent early exit.
Yeah.
So that's it in action. Your story is another example of that in action.
So so much of this is kind of unexpected, but totally beautiful, because it's all of a piece. It's all of Indra's net, net. But I'm curious about this, the psychic counselor who proved to you, because proof is a that's a, my wife being a psychic medium, proof is a heavy word, that she was talking to your mom.
Oh, yeah. That was the one with my first wife when we were in Charlotte, North Carolina. Her name was June Riggs. Very good psychic. And after she made that opening statement, she says, "Your mom is here and your grandparents." And then your mom, she says, "Your mom wants me to tell you something. She's been sitting in the chair, the golden yellow chair in your bedroom at night when you've been praying, the one you asked her to sit in." And I was shell shocked and dumbfounded because that's exactly what I used to do. I used to say my prayers and I used to have a talk with mom, and I would invite her to sit in the golden yellow chair in my bedroom. Nobody knew that. I never spoke those words aloud, not even to my wife. How did that lady know that? She had to have been talking to my mom, and my mom had to have heard my prayers. This is proof of an afterlife. This is proof that mediums, some of them are for real, and God is for real. But if there's an afterlife and everybody there says there's a God, there's a God.
Yeah.
And when you're there, you're connected back into that God head, God consciousness, because you're all one again. And so you have access to all the knowledge. But that was rock solid proof to me personally. I mean, maybe for other people hearing it, well, I don't know if I believe it. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, you can, of course, do that. It's up to you, your free will to believe whatever you want. But I can testify with complete fearless fear, no fear at all, with extreme confidence that there's an afterlife now because I've had it personally proved to me
Yeah.
from the other side.
Yeah.
And that's important. They kept trying to make sure I knew for sure, and it happened again later on in my life when I talked to Tamara Richardson, the Southern Bell medium, who's now one of my good friends, and she proved to me that Albert Einstein was talking to me. And I don't bring this one up much because it's so bizarre and so strange, but I had many readings with her, and she really got into all of this stuff and confirmed, yeah, you were sent to do this. They're telling me that you were sent to do this. And of course I asked why, and why me, and things like that. And I was given answers, but Einstein gives me a message that is so unbelievably correct, and I recognized that it had to be him because I was talking to him about this in my head. And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden he gives me the answer through this lady. The whole time I'm writing the book, I'm looking for anything that Einstein says with the word gravity and contraction, because I'm sure that gravity is a contraction of space. So I'm looking for evidence, and I do find um, what he calls his happiest thought, where he realizes how to create a contraction in space by the use of moving charges in a highly accelerated manner. It's called the Ehrenfest paradox. Um, and so I had that, but I remember the whole time I'm thinking, gravity contraction must be right, must be true. And so what does Einstein say to this lady who's never really met me?
Right.
She says, "Why is Einstein going like this? He keeps going like this."
Wow.
I says, "He's telling me something is contracted." And then I thought about it, and I remembered eventually. I was asking him, "Is gravity a contraction of space?" Come on, what are the odds that she gets that right?
Yeah.
So I'm
And
thinking to myself, my God, I'm really talking to Einstein right now, my hero. And he had a lot to say. I can tell
yeah.
you that.
Well, that's the beautiful thing. We had a wonderful psychic medium on our show. She's very well named Josie Varga, and Josie says a lot of this stuff comes through the medium because if you hear it in your head, you think it's your consciousness echoing back to you. But to have this independent confirmation from someone who has no connection to you, has no connection to Einstein, she's not an Einstein scholar, and he
No.
gives her a visual,
Yeah.
because the word, she could misunderstand it, mispronounce it, dismiss it, but a visual is something that catches them. I know, because my wife's a psychic medium, that visual gets you. It's so beautiful. It's so designed, like you said, it's so beautifully designed. But credit to you, credit to a lot of the people who are in our chat room today. You have to listen, like you said. You
Yes.
have to choose to listen. That's where the free will comes in.
That's if you want to be happy for the rest of your life, you better listen
Yeah.
to your guardian angels and learn to do that.
Yeah.
Make that your new number one goal. Pray, first of all, because they hear your prayers. All prayers are heard. I've heard that from many NDEs. They're all streaming up to heaven. Every one of them is heard by God, and there's angels also that are working, that are intermediates
Yeah.
that are handling some of that. All prayers are heard. And so when you do that, and you do that consistently, they're going to answer. They're going to find a way to answer. I mean, I've seen signs, literally signs,
Yeah.
popping up on the highway. These, LED digital signs sending me messages now. I'm thinking about what I'm working on now that we talked about beforehand. That I don't want to get into detail, that thing that I'm working on. And it says, how am I going to pull this off? How is this going to work? And, I'm wondering about it. And all of a sudden I see this sign going by, and it says, you are holding the winning hand. That's all it says.
Wow. Okay. So a fortune on a highway.
And I says, I get it. You're saying, don't worry about this. You're on the right track. You're holding the winning hand. I mean, that's all it said.
I love it. I love it. Oh, man.
So these things are happening all the time. And if you start to tune to it, you start to learn to listen, you'll get help too. You guys out there that are listening, you can get help too to find your way through this great adventure that you're on. Think of it as an adventure, not as a misery. One of the things that helped me a lot when I was going through my divorce and all the pain and suffering of that brings was a friend said to me quite simply, Mark, you have to stop looking at what you don't have and start looking at what you do have.
Yes.
And that really stuck with me. I says, that's beautiful, because once I started doing that, my whole attitude started getting better. I just started to feel naturally more happy by being thankful, having gratitude for the things I do have that are going well.
Yeah.
So that's some good advice for everybody that, if you're struggling right now, start to focus on that kind of thinking. It's all your thinking creates your world.
Yeah.
And if you think positively, things will become, positive affirmations help you in your job, in your married life, wherever, you're struggling. You start doing that, you start practicing that, and it draws positive things into you. Sort of like that book, The Secret, and some of these other things have been saying. That dynamic actually works and is happening, but you got to be disciplined enough to keep focusing and doing it, and not lose your, not listen to that negative voice in your head that will talk you out of being on your right path.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And I find the genie story, the jinn story, so instructive to be specific. You have to be specific, but then let it go. That's how I found like attraction works. Ultra specificity,
right?
And then get on with it, baby. Let it go up. Let the wave possibilities collapse until you're holding it in your hand, till you're holding the card. So let's get into some of the science. The science.
Yeah,
so
yes, definitely.
Anti-gravity. How can this be applied to UFOs, right? That thorny subject that is on everybody's mind now.
Yeah, definitely. That's been a curiosity that I've had for a long time since I thought about the unified field theory. I says, well, look, I accept that aliens, I'm a teenager and I'm reading all these books, and it says all these people can't be mistaken. And I've seen a couple of things myself as a teenager. I've seen them shoot straight up into outer space at blinding speed, zipping around in the sky in Miami. Everybody saw it that night. It was in the newspaper the next day. We are being visited by aliens. And these guys aren't flying airplanes or hot
No.
air balloons or dirigibles or any of this nonsense. They're not, all Venus. Uh, they're in actual spacecraft. And that spacecraft is crossing huge distances, and not even light speed is going to be fast enough to get here in a practical amount of time. So they have to be breaking the light speed barrier. And so I'm reading all these UFO books looking for clues. And you hear about cars stalling and compasses spinning around and
Yep.
radios changing the stations and stuff like that. And I says, hey, you know what? When I was a kid, I used to put a magnet toward the AM radio, the inductor parts, and I could change the station by just moving the magnet in and out.
Cool.
So I'm thinking magnetic fields must be being emitted by these spacecraft. So I keep reading, and then I read some of the Project Blue Book things and stuff, and I see that the colonels or the officers that are doing the investigation for the Air Force are bringing magnometers with them to the landing sites.
Yes.
So now I'm saying, you already know something. Why would you bring a magnometer to a UFO landing site? And they tested some of the materials, and grades of grass were magnetized.
Yep.
And that takes an enormous amount of magnetic force. So the clues were mounting that magnetism was a key role in generating anti-gravity. And then all I had to do was decide whether that was a byproduct of the anti-gravity field or it was the cause of the anti-gravity field. Eventually, I decided that the magnetism must be the cause, but I didn't know how it did it. What about magnetism could cause a anti-gravitational field? And I kept working on that for my whole life. And my brain, it works on a problem all the time. And so when I'm watching TV, does this relate to what you're working on? I'm seeing the science fiction show. Does anything here? Can I use this? Is that an idea? Does that make sense? And so it just runs idling in the background until it spots something and makes a connection. This relates to this. And so through all these things that I'm reading, I'm saying magnetism, magnetism. And then while I'm writing the book, I discovered the guy that wrote one of the first books. I can't think of his name, Jessup. He has something in the introduction to his first book where he talks about, he's joking about the Air Force saying that they don't need magnetism in order to drive their, but the word magnetism is blanked out. So it says, the sentence says, we don't need this M, the letter M, space, to make our jets fly and all this other stuff. So I look all over the internet. Everywhere I go, that word is blanked out with the letter M.
Whoa.
And I put this in my book. It's in my book, so you can see it for yourself.
Yeah.
And everywhere I went, either that whole introduction is removed or that sentence is in there with that word blanked out. Who did that?
Right.
Somebody that did, but they left the letter M in there.
Yeah.
So it's an awful strange coincidence. So, over time, I'm getting the idea. Well, they're trying to cover up the propulsion method, and so in the theory of super relativity, I worked on how magnetism does it. So as we talked earlier, I discovered in my book and in my paper that I have on ResearchGate I determined that gravity is a contraction of space. Okay.
All right. Sure. Okay.
It is a contraction of space. So anti-gravity must be an expansion of space.
Okay.
So now we have to figure out a way. Well, we know by pressing matter together, we can make a gravitational field. Because matter, things that have mass, emit a gravitational field. That's the mass. So now I have to figure out a way. Well, I know it has magnetism. So I study magnetism. And I studied the heck out of Faraday with all he did, Maxwell and stuff. And I realized that magnetism only happens when there's a moving charge. This is a known, rock solid scientific fact. So that when a charge goes through space, like an electron, things I studied in electronics in school, when a charge moves space, what I found is charges are actually twists of space. They're vortexes. And
Okay.
that was the current theory back in Maxwell's time. And some people still believe that today. Well, I accept that that's correct because it's a negative charge is a clockwise rotation of space. So
Okay.
it's a vortex shape. And when that happens along the x-axis from front to back, there's a pressure gradient that forms. The more space is twisted, the more it stretches. Stretching space is an expansion of space. So if you want to look at, you don't believe me, when you twist something, it stretches, get a
Right.
piece of silly putty, smack it on the ground, smack it on a picture, lift it up and twist it and watch what happens to the picture. That's an elastic. Space is a quasi-elastic solid. So the force of magnetism, the force of gravity are bendings, deformations of that material. And in this case, it's caused by a moving charge. So when a charge moves through space, space rotates because it's a twist and it's twisting space and space rotates around it. That's the magnetic field.
Okay. All right.
It's just that simple. It's not even complicated at this point. So we're 2/3 of the way there because electromagnetism is charges moving through space. And when you get that, you get a magnetic field. Now the trick was, how do you create gravity doing that? I did that in my paper. But since we're talking about anti-gravity, we're going to talk about the thing that does this, that causes space to expand. So when you do create a really strong magnetic field, space really turns wickedly hard, stretches way out, expands out. Now, why haven't we noticed this when we, do with magnets and things? And, why isn't, well, to be honest with you, they have. And every time somebody notices that, they get shut up.
Mm. Mm.
So, but this is part of my theory, like, like a physicist would make. I'm a philosopher, but, I have the right to think and, think about things like this.
Sure.
So, I decide that it really takes a strong magnetic field and it's a certain type. There's another element that I'm not going to mention here yet, not
Okay.
tonight,
Right.
but there's another element. And I discovered what the other element was by having an open discussion with people that triggered a thought that then made me realize that, oh, okay, if I do this with the magnet thing, I'm going to get an anti-gravity field. And so what is needed is really powerful magnets. And so far, the evidence that I've seen strongly suggests that there's a certain type of magnetic field that aliens use. And the reason why the magnetic field works and creates anti-gravity is because it causes space to stretch. And that is the deformation type that's necessary to get the push away instead of an attraction toward
Okay.
thing.
Okay.
So
All right.
when you set that up underneath your spacecraft, you block gravity from pulling the spacecraft becomes weightless. And if you surround the whole ship when you're out in outer space with a particular type type of magnetic field. The the best ships for flying through from star to star are going to be the motherships, which are typically shaped like cigars.
Mm-hmm.
Why? That's not an accident. It's not. They picked that geometry because it's the easiest one to surround with magnetic rings. Start at the front, another magnetic ring, another magnetic ring, another, all the way to the back. So you do the first one, you turn on strongly. The next one, even stronger. The next one, even stronger. The last one, the strongest. Now you've got this vortex shape that's a push, what I call the slip wave. And you can go through this thing through outer space, not only at the speed of light, but virtually at any speed you desire. And I'm talking about the speed of a god. So that you can move through space with one of these spacecraft at 100 times the speed of light, at 1,000 times the speed of light. And if you want to really get to other places in this galaxy, you better be going at least 10,000 times the speed of light, or it's not practical. Because
Wow.
look, if we go at the speed of light to Proxima Centauri, 4.2 light years from here, it's going to take us 4.2 years to get there and 4.2 to get back. Forget about the time dilation thing. Uh, that's not going to help you here uh, because all of the Lorentz transformations get affected by being inside of the slip wave. And this is something that modern day scientists are totally unaware of unless they know about my theory. Uh, the magnetism does so many things to help a civilization get to another star or another star system in a reasonable amount of time, days or hours, um, and do it safely, although it's incredibly dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
advised that you do build this starship with redundancies and stuff, because you cannot have the slip wave collapse when you're moving faster than the speed of light. That's certain death. And it's instantaneous, and you won't have time to tell Scotty to, tweak the engines. You'll be a black hole the size of a grain of sand, hurtling through space at just below the speed of light for eternity. And so you don't want that to happen. You have to manipulate the fields to slow down, speed up, and maneuver like UFOs do in our atmosphere.
Right.
But the slip wave gives you the benefit of going through, beyond the speed of light. So, well, how did you do that, Mark?
Yeah.
And the answer has been hidden in history for over 2 centuries. Maxwell said that C, the speed of light, is equal to 1 over the square root of permittivity times permeability. What's permittivity and permeability? These have to do with how the electrostatic charge and the magnetic field build and move through space. So these two properties of a real physical space. So if you go out in the middle of the space, out nowhere, not near anything, you have this machine that can measure permittivity or permeability. You'll measure some. But if you tweak those numbers, those property values, if you cause them to go lower, look at the equation. 1 over smaller number goes up. Speed of light now comes a bigger number. So if you want to master reality, you have to master space. And if you want to master space, you have to bias it with a magnetic field. When you do that, you will lower permittivity and permeability. When you do that, you'll have the ability to travel at any speed desired. This is just exactly what we need to get, and other aliens to get to other star systems. Otherwise, there's no way to ever do it.
Right.
And this was built into the design of the universe from the get-go, so that we could meet other civilizations someday. And so there had to be a way to get across these vast distances. And this was the design that the Father put in place that we are responsible to discover. And so
Beautifully stated.
that's where we're at right now. That's where every other alien species had to figure this out, just as I've done. It's the same process that has to happen in order for them to be able to move and get here, and we can have relations and we could learn and, you know, have great experiences. But we're never going to get there if somebody keeps us from knowing this. And somebody's been working real hard at keeping this a secret.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have three gentlemen whose names I want to mention to you in connection with this and get your thoughts on each one. So Tesla was working with big magnets, wasn't he? At different points?
Yeah, he was working, you know, I've read a book about Tesla, and it pretty much laid out the experiments that most people know about. I've heard tale, and you know, it's just a rumor of a particular experiment with magnets, which just gave me some ideas. And
Yeah.
I says, okay, let me try that my own version. And yes, uh, I don't know the details other than what I've heard from having discussions with other people. Now,
Yeah.
if there's a book out there you know about that talks in detail about experiments with magnets, I'd be interested in it. What I
Yeah.
have also learned is that he was into vortex math, 369, and that develops a certain field shape when you win it, run it through a computer graphing thing. The vortex field eventually turns into a cardioid. Do you know what a cardioid shape is?
Mm-mm.
It's sort
Mm-mm.
of like a heart shape.
Oh, okay, great.
So you got this coming out here and then thing going down there. So I'm listening to Bob Lazar.
Okay, that was another name on my list. Great.
And Bob Lazar is saying, you know, these UFOs, they put out a cardioid field shape. Bing.
There you go.
Vortex field. I'm not going to give another clue there, but vortex field, cardioid field. There's more evidence that there is a certain type of magnetic field that's making this shift. But you know, Bob says he's testing the power source, which is an immense power source, and it's emitting a kind of an anti-gravity field. But he says he doesn't detect a magnetic field. So I'm saying, Bob, come on, think. In my book, I say how to shield. You can shield magnetic fields. There's two ways. You can diamagnetic and ferromagnetic shielding, so that one short circuits and absorbs the fields into it, the other one reflects them back. So if you use double that, you know, no magnetic fields getting out of there. So you could have something inside, Bob, of that thing, and what's going to happen is beautiful, is that the magnetic fields are compressed within the sphere, but you're feeling, when you go to press, you're feeling the result, the other field that's created by the rotation of the charges within the power source, which he emits, is the way they think it's basically a little particle accelerator, cyclotron inside of this thing. And so that's why I believe he didn't detect a magnetic field around the power source that was being used. But underneath ships, a lot of times they don't bother to shield it in that direction. Shielding has to be around where the people are.
Mm-hmm.
Because intense magnetic fields can cause harm if they're strong enough. Right, especially for people that have any kind of metal inside of them. It's not good.
Yeah, no. So you seem to believe Bob Lazar.
Yeah.
That's terrific. See, that's another data point for all of us. Someone who's looked at the work that he's looked. Now, do you think that he, and it's by design, the government is great at compartmentalizing, whether it's their medical programs, their psychological programs, their science programs. They get everybody working on little bits and pieces. So he was looking at his little piece of the pie. Right. Might be what's going on there. So the next guy I want to ask you about, when you were talking about cigar shaped, right? Avi Loeb at Harvard,
was talking about Oumuamua and said, "Look, guys, this is a probe ship. This isn't some random thing. This isn't some asteroid or whatnot." Have you kind of
Uh,
looked into that and considered that in
that
relation
thing that
to?
looks like a big, long, skinny asteroid
Yeah, it kind of looks
that's
like a
way out
cigar,
there. I don't
sort
know.
of.
Yeah, it kind of
Yeah,
went back and through.
yeah,
If it's really that shape and it's not moving, I would say it's a starship if it changed speeds.
that's what he said. That's what he said. This thing slowed down and then it reaccelerated. He was talking about solar sails and things like that, but he's
Yeah, I
got
don't
it.
know
Yeah,
how much it slowed down and
yeah,
accelerating. I can understand if it's in a gravitational field and it's
mhm,
getting swung around.
yeah.
So when it leaves the gravitational field and the swinging around stops, it'll slow down.
Okay, there you go.
What I want is an acceleration that, instantaneous, like they do in the atmosphere here, zigzag, right angles, um, something that takes it off a path, and the path is, it's really traveling with inertia,
Yeah,
and so it's got no thrusting going on other than it's falling in or out of a gravitational field, which can cause it to accelerate or decelerate, maybe even. But for the most part, it falls in, and it gets swung. You get that whiplash, from the planet, and you're going a little bit faster. That's how we got some of our satellites that we shot way out into the outer planets to get there faster by kind of whipping around Jupiter or Saturn or whatever. And so I haven't looked into it that much, but
right.
it's moving too consistently, as far as I understand, to be anything but an elongated space rock.
Right, and he gets a lot of pushback. He's got a new project now called the Galileo Project. He's still at it, and he's pulled in Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, those guys, the disclosure guys. So we're down to about 15 minutes, but I got my buddy Mr. Spock here with me.
I see that.
So time travel and warp speed and transporters. Is there something to these things?
I've looked into all of them, especially time travel. And I'm against time travel, but I see that it can. And when I started writing book, I thought, no way. But then when I got into it and started to understand how time works in this dimension versus the afterlife, when you get outside of time, then you can have access to any time, future, past, present. They're all happening, and you realize they're all happening at the same moment.
Yeah.
And unless that's true, the only way you can time travel is that time, all of it has to be happening all at once. And that's what I go into in the book. So in order to do it, you have to build a Stargate. And
Yeah.
then the Stargate, and I go into the Stargate on my in my book about how to do it at a higher level. Basically you have to have a metamaterial. Uh, and I realized this actually from a psychic who gave me a clue, who claims there are stargates. And I said, well, I don't know. I'll look into it, and and turns out the thing that she mentions was something called a fractal lens.
Okay.
I never heard of that.
Yeah.
And I look into it, and it turns out fractal lenses do exist, and they're made out of metamaterials. And at the very beginning of the chapter in Stargates, I said, the only thing I know for sure right now, I'm writing this, and I don't know how this chapter is going to turn out because I'm researching it as I write it. But the one thing I know for sure, in order for this to work, something is going to have to go faster than the speed of light. So I start researching, and I find a fractal lens. I find it's made out of metamaterials. I find that this is something that material scientists are making. And on the internet, they're claiming that when they shine light inside of a metamaterial, it moves infinitely fast.
Oh.
So there was my something I needed to be moving faster than the speed of light to put in the framework of the Stargate. So what needs to happen is that you have to make the space within the Stargate structure vibrate at an extremely high frequency. I'm talking beyond terahertz, maybe. And so, in
Wow.
order to do that, you have to compress the light beams. If you use lasers or whatever, and you shoot them through these fractal lenses, when they go through there, no matter what frequency they are, they're going to come out way higher frequency because they're going to get compressed
Mhm.
by the metamaterial because they accelerate to these enormous speeds. So if you don't make it, if you don't bring down permittivity and permeability, which is what they do in the metamaterial. Remember I told you about that
Yep.
earlier
Yep.
in the show? Well,
Yeah.
there's evidence that proves it. They've designed a material that permittivity and permeability drop to zero. And according to the Maxwell's equation, the light should go infinitely fast. And
There you
that's
go.
what they're claiming. But if you tweak it a little so it's not quite zero, you can tune it to whatever frequency you need. That comes shooting out of the frame, and maybe you use sound along with that at ultra high frequencies. You vibrate that air, you open a portal gate into another dimension or time.
Yeah.
So
That
this
makes
is my,
sense to me.
yeah, of course, that's the theory
Yeah.
of super relativity. It always makes sense.
Gotcha. Right. So did that psychic that mentioned Stargate, did she mention the moon or Antarctica by any chance? Because those are the prevalent rumors.
I think she's aware of it, but not in my
Okay.
reading.
Gotcha.
This is the
Um,
same lady that was talking to Einstein and Tesla and
yeah, yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like
Who
that.
you're now a piece of their work. You're in that lineage.
That's exactly what she said. She says you are. She called it. You're part of the Rat Pack, not the Rat Pack, the Brat Pack.
Oh, nice.
You know what she means by
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I do. Of course, how could I not? My grandfather grew up with Frank Sinatra in Hoboken, but
Well,
um,
not well.
well, okay,
It's a
but
group of
okay, right.
guys
Yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of all do the same thing,
right,
right?
right.
So I'm part of that group.
Yep,
The Newton, the Einstein, the Maxwell that do this thing. So I'm here doing my part
yep.
of that thing. And she's saying, well, that's it. And I says, I just don't get this. I've lived such an ordinary small life and I'm fairly happy.
Yeah.
And you're telling me now that this was planned ahead of time. I was picked for this. And I says, I want to know why.
I don't think we get to. I don't think we get to know, but
I
you know.
asked, well, I got answered.
Oh, you did. You did.
Yeah. They said we picked you because we knew we could trust you.
Ah,
And that's it. I said, well,
wow.
gee, I kind of feel like I better try hard. I feel kind of responsible. I says, I don't want to I made a promise, I guess, and like we all did. Now mine is a strange one. I'm in a very odd predicament here because I don't know of anybody that's got this deal. I mean, I
Right.
know plenty of people that came down to be doctors and lawyers and firemen and bankers, and I don't know anybody that does this kind of line of work. Inventing anti-gravity and stuff like this. This is
Yeah.
a really kind of unique thing, and I'm still grappling with it because part of me is in this avatar, and this avatar likes, like most people, he likes to eat good food, take a break every once in a while, relax, get
Yeah.
distracted. And it's kind of hard to do that now because, there's this obligation and I'm not going to ignore it because I don't want to get to the other side and then have to answer because there's going to be a life review. Got news
Yeah.
for everybody. That's coming for everybody.
Yeah.
And have to explain myself. I says, well, I didn't get around to that invention because I was liking to play video games and, I like to be at the beach and, I just
Yeah.
never got around to it. I don't want to, I don't,
Yeah.
I don't want to have to make any excuses. So So here we are.
Here we are with 6 minutes left to go. Unbelievable. For now, we're gonna call this part one. But so the title of your book, Master of Reality. Explain that title, because to me it's very provocative and rich.
Um, well, this is just what this is all about, because this theory of super relativity is a reality model.
Okay.
And so if you want to be the master, you have to have the right model. He or her, and only those people, whoever, who have the right model can master reality, like build a starship that can go to other worlds, build a stargate that can go to other times and dimensions. Only the master knows all of these things. And who's the master really? But the creator,
Right.
God. And so, I'm like the little student in the
Yeah.
picture, right?
Yeah.
And those
Nice.
those things there, those things have meaning. Those are the parts of the signature of God, which was discovered by a lady who discovered this during a near death experience. This is
Wow.
the inside. This comes from my theory, which I worked with them for a while to try to demonstrate this to them. That is the inside of what the neutron and proton look like. The quarks,
Wow.
the quarks are moving in that pattern, a trefoil knot pattern, which explains why they don't fly apart, because they're moving at 99% the speed of light within the neutron and the proton. They hold themselves together. The
Wow.
strong force is created by the dynamic structure of the trefoil knot, with the quarks moving at 99% the speed of light, which causes that thing to spin and roll, which you eventually get the sphere, the trefoil knot, and the triangle represents the three dimensions of space. The trefoil knot spinning and rolling becomes the sphere. The sphere is the device that is rapidly rotating. And if you look up the Ehrenfest paradox, you'll understand why that rapid rotation creates a contraction of space, which creates gravity. Everything is made simple. There's nothing hard about this. We humans have made this whole thing very hard because we've established our own little thought paradigms that aren't true, and then we defend those paradigms, which was what they're doing in physics right now. They're all running down rabbit holes created by quantum mechanics,
Right.
and they'll never have the right answer. They'll never be the master of reality because they are using the wrong model.
Mm,
He who
understood.
has the correct model is the only one that can master reality. It's it's like Feynman said, what if quantum theory is wrong?
Yeah.
This is the soft underbelly of the whole project of quantum gravity. If quantum theory is wrong, then trying to combine it with gravity will have been a huge waste of time.
Yeah.
That's
Yikes.
why they can't find a graviton, because it doesn't exist.
Wow. I just want to say that trifle knot, that's all over Celtic and other, and
And
those are the
that's
clues that people are clued into these things.
the all thanks to the internet, thanks to, you see these things, and I saw that too. I'm aware of that. That's no accident.
Yeah.
That's them connecting by the process of infusion, what some people might call channeling. This information is being given to certain people along the way,
Yeah.
and it all comes together. It all makes sense. It all links together perfectly. This is something important. This is my job now, to get this message out to as many people as humanly possible, and to do whatever I can to bring anti-gravity into this realm so that we can go to the stars and join our brothers and sisters and become part of the universal community. It will all be better for it. And someday we're going to have to get off this planet. And the
Right.
only way to do that is to build starships. And for all we know, a meteor or an asteroid could be heading at us right now.
Yeah.
And if we don't have these ships, we're in jeopardy. We need to build them right away. We will not be safe until these starships are available to all people, not just to a select power mad few.
Yeah. Yeah. We are out of time, but Tesla, SpaceX, Bigelow, are they on the right track, Mark? Or are they wasting their time?
Tesla, I think I would like to talk to him. I
Oh,
mean,
great.
to Musk someday. Maybe I'll get the opportunity.
Yeah.
Then I can answer that question.
Gotcha.
Perhaps he knows more than he lets on to. But you know what? He makes money by making rockets.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we really don't need rockets.
Right.
So he wouldn't really benefit unless he was the first person to be building the starships. Then he could benefit again. But if he looks at it from the point of view that I make money building rockets, so I don't want that replaced, and he could be part of the cabal for all I know.
Sure.
But maybe he knows and he's just waiting till the right time to advance this newer technology.
Right.
I don't
right.
know. I've
Right.
never talked to him, but
Yeah.
He's a visionary, and I like visionaries.
Yeah, he is. There's some interesting theories about him. A guy named Musk was mentioned in Werner von Braun's book about going to Mars that he wrote in the 1950s. He said a guy named Musk is going to get us there. So we're going to have to. I have dates open in November that may align with something big that you're working on. I'm going to do what you asked and send you an email right after the show. But we are past our time, my friend, my new friend. All the links, folks, to Mark's social media, to his Amazon book, to a beautiful trailer. I was watching it this morning for his book, and also for a paper that he wrote, Theory of Super Relativity, Synoptic FAQ. That's on his website. I think that I can go back and read that now and make a lot more of it.
There's another paper called the Unified Field Theory Research Paper at ResearchGate. Just click on the button on my website. It'll take it to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Until we meet again, I'm going to keep good thought for your experiment. It's very exciting. And I hope to see you again in 3 months.
Okay. Sounds good.
Take care. Good night, sir. Good night, everybody. No elaborate ending tonight because we're past time. Thank you all. It's an honor to be here as your interstellar guide. Take care.